All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you're on a mobile device, smaller screen like that. If you're on a larger screen like a desktop computer, something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video. So scrolling down here, I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So I'll be starting here with Theodore C. So if you happen to post your question before Theodore C., and you're here for questions for people who I think are here waiting to see your question get answered. If you post your question at 10 o'clock last night, I'm guessing you aren't still waiting to see your question get answered. So without further ado, we'll get started here. So Theodore C says, good morning. No matter how hard I try to fix my early extension, I can't seem to translate it to my actual swing. I'm following week one of early extension quick win. My lead leg and hip won't continue to rotation and get me stuck. This makes me stand up and flip. Any tips? It'd be hard to say without seeing your swing, but if you're coming down steep, that would be wide. So basically, so basically what it comes down to, I hear this all the time. I've tried everything, and the reality is that you really haven't gotten out of your comfort zone. Is really what the reality is, because not being able to do something comes down to two things. It's either physically you are not capable of doing it, which we know isn't true because it sounds like you're able to do it in a practice swing, which if you're physically capable of doing something in a practice swing, there's only one reason why you wouldn't be able to do it in a swing with the golf ball, and that's mental. That there's a mental block that is stopping you from doing that. So the mental block could be, the feeling of, well, if I open up my body, I'm going to come over the top. Because if you're someone who is used to early extending and flipping, right? You're someone who's used to doing this, and you keep the same upper body movements, right? But now you open up your body. Well, that's going to be this. I'm going to swing way over the top. So there's things that match up in the golf swing, right? And you have to match all early extending. That's all matches up together to hit a functional golf shot. Now, albeit it's not going to be the functional golf shot that most people are going to want. It's not going to be the most consistent thing because it's typically going to add loft. You're going to hit a lot of thin shots. It's not going to be the most efficient way, but it is definitely going to be a functional way. It's a much more functional way than opening up the body and coming over the top. Whereas shallowing the club, squaring the face earlier, getting down and opening up the body, that all matches up, and that's what we see most of the better players do. So it's about matching those things up. So it sounds like to me that you are starting down steep, meaning you're getting this club to be in kind of a vertical position, and now you've got to make a compensation later on. You're mentally not going to allow yourself to keep swinging over the top because you know that that's going to result in a bad shot if you go like that, right? So you need to get that club shot. You more than likely need to get that club shallowing out, and that's going to be the move course. So that's what I would look at. Without seeing your swing, it's hard for me to know exactly why. But what I would look at is do whatever it takes, literally whatever it takes to get your body opening up, and then and to get rid of your early extension, and then see what happens with the other place. You might stick the club in the ground a foot behind the golf ball. Well, then, after that, it's okay. Well, now how can I stop early extension and not stick the ground sticking the club in the ground? Well, I need to start getting it shallowed out, and then that's how you have to work through it. So it's not an easy thing to do. I'm not saying it's an easy thing. You're just going to go out there in one range session. It ain't going to work that way. But that's basically the process that you have to work through it. So it's tough. I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's easy. You may need to get some coaching or need somebody to tell you exactly what you need to do in person or online or whatever it might be. Someone to see exactly what you're doing and show you exactly what you need to do. That would be my recommendation. But without seeing it, I would recommend you probably need to get the club shallowing out, because if the club's steep, there's no way you're going to be able to open up your body without swinging way over the top. And you know that that's bad. Your body knows that that's bad. You know that that's going to lead to a bad result. So it's going to stop you from doing that. So hopefully that makes sense. But to get to the move course, click the instruction tab, then click the Toss-to-Weak Golf System, then the move from there. So Thomas O says, stable fluid spine. I am currently working through the 3,000 reps of the testing portion. It okay to have a slight forward press when utilizing irons while doing the reps. It seems I have better contact when doing this and keep the 7 to 8 degree angle through the reps. Yeah, that's completely fine. There's a lot of players that have a forward press, a lot of them that don't. It's really that's one thing it's just a personal preference thing. And if it helps you to hit better golf shots, then why not? So John L says, good morning, Q. When Clay demonstrates the weight shift to the left, is it okay to have the feeling of falling to the left while shifting to the right? I remember this saying before in videos and before swinging down, and you should feel like you are breaking a stick under your left foot. That is much different than the feeling you are falling to the left side. I'm confused by what you're... Is it okay to have the feeling of falling to the left while shifting the weight? Yeah, that's... Well, one thing to keep in mind is that feelings are all relative. So what you feel and what someone else feels and what I feel and what Clay feels, these can all be completely different things. So what you have to do is you have to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. That's really what it comes down to, is adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. You know, Jack Nicklaus said he couldn't release the club fast enough. I believe it was Jack Nicklaus that said that. And most people, if they feel that way, that's not going to be a good feeling. But for him, it was a great feeling. It helped him a lot. So that's what you kind of have to look. It's adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So yes, you want to have the feeling, or you want to have what you actually want to have happen is you want to be getting to your lead side for sure. So I guess I'm not really sure. I'm saying it's okay to have a feeling of falling to the left while shifting the weight. Yeah, I mean, falling to the left is going to be shifting the weight. That is what's shifting weight. So David K says, how to best use the course? Do I complete all 3 levels of the course before moving to the next, or should I do level 1 of all TSG components, then level 2? Do I complete a section video after I've seen it and marked it, the concepts down, or only once I've completed the drills and am satisfied doing it correctly? Thank you. So how should you move through the course? It's really up to you. You can do it. You can go through each level, right? You can go to the stable fluid spine, work through level 1, work through level 2, work through level 3, then go to the power turn, work through level 1, level 2, level 3, and so on. And keep going through each piece of the system. And you can do it either way. There's no right or wrong way. You can do that, or you can do all the level 1s if you want. You can go, you can do the stable fluid spine level 1, then you go to the power turn level 1, and then through each piece of the system. Then you can go, after you work through that, then do level 2, the stable fluid spine, so on and so forth. The only way that you would be going through the system wrong would be if you just kind of skip pieces of it to go to pieces later on. So the biggest mistake that I see people make when working through the Toss-to-Weak Golf system is that they see that they have an early release, right? And then they just go straight to the straight line release course and start working through the drills. Well, I'll tell you that it's going to be dang near impossible to do the straight line release course if you are not doing some of the other pieces of the course as well. If your spine angle if you're leaning toward the target and moving your spine angle all over the place, there's no chance you're going to release the club out in front. You have no chance. So want to make sure that if you're casting the club from the very start of the swing, again, you have no chance of releasing that club out in front. So there's piece you want to work through, work your way up through they're in a certain order for a reason, but you can do all the level 1s if you want, or you can do the level 1, level 2, level 3 of each piece if you want. That's completely up to you. As far as when to mark them complete, again, that's up to you. You can come up with your own system. That's just there to keep track of your progress. So if you feel like after you watch it, you want to keep track of your progress by marking it complete after you've watched the video and you know you're going to go do it, or if you want to watch the video, go do it, and then mark it complete afterwards, that's completely fine too. It's just a way to keep track of your progress. That's all it's for. Lester H says, in the best lag drill video 3/9/2021, Clay uses a tennis ball and a stick. Please give me the specifics on how he made this. I'm sorry, Lester, I really don't know. I think it's an alignment stick, and he put a hole through a tennis ball. I don't know that it's much more complicated than that. But I didn't make it, so I'm not really sure exactly how he made it, but that's what it looks like to me. So Gufron A says, elbow position in backswing, in downswing, first move in downswing. So elbow position it can be in a lot of places. You're going to look on tour and you're going to see elbow position like that, and you're going to see elbow position like that. It really depends on how long your swing is. So if you have a shorter swing, your hands don't get up real high. You really need to have your elbow more in, right? If you have a longer swing, you can have your elbow more out like that because you have a much longer time to be able to get that elbow in the right position. The downswing elbow motion, that's the most important thing, right? You need to have that elbow working into the body like this. It cannot start the swing by the elbow going back like this, because that's going to make the club come down steep, and that's going to lead to issues in the swing. So you want to make sure that the elbow is working in like that. Now, if you're someone who has a short swing, right, you don't get the club going up very high, and you get that elbow working out like that, you're pretty much dead in the water. It's going to be very, very difficult to get that elbow to work in the right way. So that's why I say if you have a shorter swing, you want to make sure that elbow is more in, right? If you have a longer swing, having the elbow in is good, but you can let it get out a little bit because you have more time to get the elbow to be in a better position in the downswing. So Ken P says, would you please show both hand and wrist position throughout the swing, especially through lag, ball contact, and release? I'm confused with some of the terms Clay uses for extension and cupping. So let's go over exactly what the wrist movements are. So if I have my wrist like this, it's in a neutral position. So basically my everything's just kind of lined up in a straight line. That's in a neutral position. If I bend my wrist, there's basically six motions of the wrist. All right. If I go like that, if I go knuckles back, that's called extension, right? So that's just me going like that, right? That's wrist extension. If I go like this, that's wrist flexion, right? That's wrist flexion right there. If I go like this, where I go thumbs up, right? So see, I have neutral wrist, and then I go thumbs up. That's what's called radial deviation. And then if I go like this, this is ulnar deviation, where I go thumbs out, away from me, thumbs down, right? And then we have rotation, right? So we're going to have pronation and supination. That's the outward rotation of the wrist and inward rotation of the wrist. So that's basically the movements of the wrist. At address, you're going to be in a fairly neutral position, right? You may have in your lead wrist, you're going to have a little bit of ulnar deviation in both wrists, as your hands are kind of as the hands are holding the club and the club's kind of hanging down, right? You may have a little bit of cupping in this wrist. And cupping, when we say cupping, that's typically in reference to extension, right? Cupping and extension are the same thing. Bowing and flexion are the same thing. So you'll typically have a little bit of cupping in both wrists, kind of at the address position, and some ulnar deviation. Now, when you start the swing, you want to kind of keep the wrist kind of angled out away from you. You don't typically want to go into radial right away because that's going to make you want to throw the club early. So having some neutral and ulnar deviation when you're going back is good. Now, as you start down, your wrist is going to start going into ulnar deviation, and your trail wrist is going to start to bending back as the club is shallowing. All right. And then as I'm coming down here, I'm typically going to get some flexion in my wrists, right? As I'm starting down, and some extension in my trail wrist as I'm getting into impact and adding some ulnar back into my swing here at impact to get into a forward shaft lean kind of position and then release it out in front. So I'm not going to go into crazy detail on that because that would be like a 20-minute thing, and I want to answer questions. But if you want to see more on this, like if you want to see that 20-minute explanation of the wrists and everything and how they move, then I'd recommend going to the crazy detail vault and checking out the videos that we have on the wrist motion. So to check those out, click the instruction tab, then click the vault categories, then click the crazy detail vault, and then click the one. We have one on the left wrist, one on the right wrist, and they're like 10, 15-minute videos if you want to go check those out. And Clay goes throughout the entire swing what the motions are. Row Hit P says, 20-minute speed training. I would only unleash driver once or twice per 4-hour round. So how to warm up for high club head speed during round? Or are you saying the type 2X fibers would already be more active from this between round training method for a higher average natural club head speed on course over time? If this is the case, would my wedge distance control need recalibrated over time? What? I'm sorry, I have to read that again. I would only unleash driver once or twice per 4-hour round. How to warm up to high club head speed during a round. So it's really just about the effort. The high club head speed is about the recruiting those type 2X muscle fibers is about the effort that you're putting in. It's not about warming up or anything like that. It's about the effort. Are you giving it everything you have, 100% effort? I don't generally recommend doing that on the course because it's usually not going to end up a good result. I would recommend only doing that in your speed training. Your play speed and your speed training speed are going to be two different things. And Clay talks about that in the 20-minute distance fix. So you wouldn't try to ramp. I mean, if you were trying to do like a long drive contest, then yeah, you're swinging with 100% effort on your swing because you have whatever 8 shots to get it in a grid, right? But in a round, you wouldn't be warming up or gearing up for super high club head speed. You wouldn't be doing that. So I guess the answer to the question is you don't do that. Your speed training, your as fast as you can speed is different than your playing speed. Your playing speed, as hard as you can speed goes up, your playing speed is going to go up as well. So you wouldn't need to be recalibrating wedge distance or anything like that because your play speed is going to be going up as your speed training speed is going to go up. So you're not going to be ramping up for like a long drive thing. And honestly, I don't know if you were doing that. I don't know how you would do that. So Robert B says, Q, don't know if you answered this last week. If it was asked during office hours. Well, last week I didn't really have office hours, only Monday. But my bad habit of pointing my backwards in the backswing is hard to overcome. Justin Thomas appears to keep just his right armpit closed, swinging back, which keeps his elbow close to his right side ribs, pointing down throughout most of the swing. No bad practice for me. Robert, I don't know what you're asking. I don't know what you're but my bad habit of pointing my backwards in the backswing. Sorry, Robert, your question doesn't make any sense. I don't know what you're talking about. Something pointing backwards in the armpit, closed swing in the backswing. If you can be a little bit more specific about what you're asking, I'd be happy to help. But I don't know what you're asking. Nicholas S says, how much does the club travel before shoulders begin to move? Also, does the lower body start the club to move back? It's going to be difficult to get your shoulders to move without the club moving, right? You get up here, your shoulders start moving, the club goes with it. So if your shoulders move much at all, it's not very much before the club moves. Does the lower body start the club to move back? Yeah. So basically, you want your backswing to start from the ground up, right? And you want your downswing to start from the ground up. So yes, the lower body. You don't want to just start lifting up the club like this without the lower body. You want to start loading up and getting that club going back right away with the legs and then the torso and everything. Brandon H says, hope you're feeling better. The punch the sky drill and 20-minute distance fix resulted in my head being bump out of position. Should I shorten my backswing? So the skyscraper drill is all about getting the hands high. It's not about going like this. The skyscraper drill, you don't want to do this, right? That's not what we're trying to get you to do. We're trying to get your arms to elevate. That's all you're trying to do. Is basically what you're trying to do is imagine you're a touchdown signal, right? So if somebody scored a touchdown, the referee would go like that, right? That's what you're trying to do in the skyscraper drill. You're not trying to go like this, right? That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to go like this, right? So I'm still staying in my posture and keeping my head in the right place. I'm not lifting up out of it to try to get my hands higher. I'm just lifting. I'm going like this. That's what I'm doing with my arms, is I'm lifting up. So hopefully that helps. Your head should not be jumping up out of position. That's not what you're trying to do. So John S says, I'm working on kicking out the clutch with the weight shift or the weight in the left heel to get better hip turn while maintaining posture. Do you have any advice on this? I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for, John. I would recommend, my advice would be to work through the drill that Clay has on the video and try to drive with the heel. I'm not sure what you're looking for. If you have something more specific, I'll be happy to help, but I don't know what you're looking for. Dave M says, when chipping, do you set up with the spine tilted slightly back? Yeah, it can be vertical to slightly angled back. So if you look at chipping here, I'm very, very slightly angled away, or pretty vertical. It's not going to be, because your stance is narrow, you're not going to be in the ball position. It's not going to be like it is with a normal swing. It's going to be a little bit more toward vertical. So John C says, address, should the end of the club point to your belly button? Not necessarily. It doesn't have to. I mean, that's not a bad place. The handle would be pretty, I would say your handle would have to be pretty high for it to point toward your belly button, which is, I mean, you can be in this kind of position like this and play good golf. Generally, you're going to see it's going to be more toward the belt buckle, or more toward the left of the belt buckle. It's typically about where it's going to be. But that's not something I'd be really trying to go for. In your setup, I'd be just trying to make sure you're in a nice athletic position. So a little bit of flex in the legs, hinging at the waist, let your arms kind of hang straight down, right? For all your clubs, except your driver. Driver is going to be a little bit longer, so you're going to reach just a little bit for it, right? So I can kind of show you the difference here. So here would be, this would be with a wedge. My arms will be kind of hanging straight down, right? Athletic position. It's not pointed toward my belly button. It's pointed more toward my belt buckle, I would say. And then with a driver, I'm going to be just a little bit more upright And I'm just going to reach a little bit more for it because the club is so much longer. And again, it's probably going to be a little bit more toward maybe just a hair above my belt buckle for that. And then as far as here, right, the driver is going to be more toward my left hip. And then with a wedge, it's going to be, you know, a little bit basically on the left of my my belt buckle a little bit. But again, this doesn't mean that you can't set up with it pointed straight up to you. And it doesn't mean that you can't set up with it pointed way more ahead and play good golf. These are things that are more like personal preference. They're not what I would call universal truths, things that every single tour player does. That's what the top speed golf system is. So Anthony M says, hi Q, greeting from England. Can you review setup thoughts in wet sand versus normal sand? Yeah, so basically in normal sand, what we want to do is take a nice wide stance. We're going to play the ball more forward in the stance. And then we want to make sure that we're opening up this club face about 45 degrees. And you want to use a wedge that has some bounce on it. The bounce is this little chunk of metal that's on the back of the club here. That's the bounce. And the reason why we want to open up the club face and use the bounce is that the bounce is what allows the club to glide through the sand. If you imagine you're water skiing, right? If you're water skiing, you want to have the nose of the skis out of the sand or out of the water so that the skis will just glide on top of the water. That's what we're doing when we're exposing this bounce, right? That's, if you imagine the leading edge of this club, that's the nose of the skis. That's going to help this club glide through the sand. Otherwise, if we use a square club face, and just like if we were skiing and we let the nose of the skis go down into the water, what's going to happen with the skis? The skis are going to do a nosedive. That's exactly what's going to happen if we don't open up the face. If we put the ball back in the stance and we let the leading edge, right, get down into the sand, it's going to dive into the sand, and you're not going to be able to get the ball out of there. You're going to chunk it, right? So we want to set this up to allow the club to glide through the sand. And what you're doing is you're hitting the sand, and then the sand is throwing the ball out onto the green. So that, again, wide stance, ball more forward in the stance because you're not hitting the ball, you're hitting the sand. Open face, and then you want to hit the sand, you know, about 4 to 6 inches behind the golf ball. Let the club glide through the sand and get it out onto the green. Now, in wet sand, the club is not going to glide through it as easily because it's more packed. So what you need to do is you want to let the club actually dig just a little bit to get underneath the golf ball. So you're just going to ease off of these things that I talked about that help the club glide through the sand. So one would be opening up the face, right? So you want to open up the face a little bit less when you are hitting out of wetter sand. You want to play the ball a little less forward in the stance because you want to hit a little bit closer to it because it's not going to dig as much. So that's basically the differences that you're going to make when you hit out of wet sand. And it just takes practice. Not all wet sand is the same. Some wet sand is more packed and concrete than others. The more packed and concrete it is, the less you're going to open up this face, the closer you're going to hit to the golf ball, and the less speed that you have to provide it because you're going to be catching more of the golf ball. The more fluffy the sand, the more you're going to open this face, the more behind the ball you're going to hit, and the better that club is going to kind of glide through the sand to get it up out of there. So it just takes some practice to kind of get used to assessing the sand and the kind of lie that you're going to have. One thing you can kind of do is, you may notice tour players do this, is they'll kind of dig their feet into the sand to kind of get a feel for it. So if it feels really, really soft and fluffy, then I would definitely be opening up that face, playing the ball forward, and hitting the ground, you know, 4 to 6 inches behind the ball, and just letting that club kind of glide through the sand. If you're getting in the sand and it feels really crunchy and you're not really able to dig down in the sand, it's kind of hard, right? Dirt, then you're going to open up the face less, right? You're not going to have it 45 degrees open. You may have it 25 degrees open or something like that. Again, these are just things, it's a skill that you're going to have to learn and practice in order to be able to get good at this. But you're going to play the ball a little less forward in your stance, right? And then you're going to not swing quite as hard. You're going to hit a little bit closer to the golf ball. Generally, it's actually typically easier to hit out of wet sand. The hardest part is assessing, what you need to do. Because if you're in fluffy sand or if you're in hard sand and you assess it to be pretty fluffy, well, what may end up happening is you may end up hitting the sand and the club will bounce off of the sand and you'll scold it out of there. So that's really the toughest part, is kind of assessing what you are. And that's just what kind of lie you have and what kind of sand you're in. It's just a skill that you're going to have to learn and go practice. I wish it was something I could just tell you what you need to do and you're just going to be really good at it. But fortunately, just like, dialing in your wedges, the right distances and things like that, it's not just something that's going to happen out of nowhere. It's a skill that has to be learned. So I'd recommend finding a practice bunker near you. Bring a bottle of water and put some water in there and really pack down the sand and see how it reacts and see, how opening up the face a little bit less. That's really the best way to learn it, is to actually go out there and firsthand and practice in these things and open up the face more, open up the face less. Try to hit a shot out of wet packed sand like you would out of normal sand. And see what happens, see what the difference is. That's really the best way to learn and to get really, really good at hitting these sand shots. All right. So William S. says, what is the ideal position for the club at the top of the backswing for a driver, 5-iron pitching wedge? There is no ideal position. It's really personal preference. There's some people. I will say this: if you have a longer swing, you have more of a leeway of where the club can be, because you have more time to get the club in a better position at the start of the downswing. So if you have for example, if you have a really, really long swing, so let's say you're like a John Daly, right? Really, really long swing. The club's way, way back here like this. Well, he can be really, really across the line and with his elbow flaring out and all that stuff, because he has a lot more time to get the club to be in a better position at the start of the swing. But if you're like a John Rahm, who has a shorter swing, like John Rahm cannot be like this at the top of the swing. He cannot have his elbow flared really far out, and he can't have the club way, way across the line like that, because if he did, then he wouldn't have enough. Yeah, I'm telling you, he would not be a tour player. He would be a hack for sure if he was in that kind of position at the top, because he doesn't have enough time in the downswing to get the club to be in a good position to be able to be in a better position at impact. That's why John Rahm is really, really laid off. He looks like this at the top. The club's really, really laid off, and his elbow is very far in like that, and he gets that club. That club's basically already in a good position. So it really, really just depends on how long your swing is and what position you can be at the top. You're going to look on tour and you're going to see all kinds of different things. That's why there's no ideal position, because it really depends on the player. Bubba Watson, long swing, very vertical arms, looks a lot different than a Matt Kuchar. Matt Kuchar probably wouldn't play great golf from where Bubba Watson is, and Bubba Watson probably wouldn't play great golf from where Matt Kuchar is. So there's no ideal position for all. It's what it comes down to is it's really what's the ideal position that works for you. But I will say that if you have a shorter swing, you need to be in more of a laid off position typically. And if you have a longer swing, you have a little bit more of a leeway because you have more time to make the necessary changes to get into a better position. So there's no universal truth for where you have to be at the top of the swing. The universal truths are the pieces of the top speed golf system. If you look at, Matt Kuchar and Bubba Watson had two very different looking golf swings, right? But they're all doing the pieces of the top speed golf system. They both have stable fluid spine. They both have a power turn. They're both getting lag. They're both releasing the club out in front and have the compression line. They both have those things in the swing, even though their swings look very different. That's because the pieces of the top speed golf system, those are the universal truths. Those are the things that all tour players do. And those are the things that you really need to make sure that you're doing in your swing before you worry about the top of the swing or having the perfect club position for every single club, because it's just not the things that matter the most in the swing. So Keaton S says, should releasing the club be more natural, athletic, or conscious timed move? It should be a natural athletic thing, but that doesn't mean that that's what it's going to be for you. If you're releasing the club early, right, and you want to release the club later, like we do in the top speed golf system, it's going to need to be conscious in time for a while until it becomes a natural athletic thing for you to do. So a lot of what golf is, as I've mentioned many times, is it's adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So if what you do right now feels natural to you and it feels athletic to you, but you look at it on video and it doesn't look the way that you want to, you're going to need to feel something else to get it to look different. And that's what I'm talking about when I say adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. You may need to really get out of your comfort zone to get it to look where you want it to. But I will say, if it doesn't look the way you want it to, it's going to need to be a conscious thing that you're doing in order to. Basically, you have to work through the stages of learning, right? So there's 4 stages of learning. There's the first stage is unconscious incompetence. This is where you're unaware of anything that's wrong, or that you're just unaware that you're doing anything wrong. And then you go into what's called conscious incompetence. This is where now you become aware. So let's say you were releasing the club early, and at some point in your life, you didn't know that was a bad thing to do. You had no idea that was something that was bad, that was going to lead to poor strikes. You had no idea. And then maybe you become a top speed golf member and you look at the top speed golf system. When we talk about getting that club to release out in front instead of at the golf ball, so not having that flippy release, getting that release to happen out in front. And now you become aware that, okay, in order for me to play better golf, I need to get that club to be releasing more out in front. And then you move into, then you start working on it, right? And then you have to consciously feel it, right? You work into what's called conscious competence. This is where you are able to do it. You're able to get the club to release the way you want to, but you have to think about it. You have to consciously do it in order to make it happen. And then eventually you work into the last stage, which is unconscious competence. This is where you're doing it, but it's natural. It's natural. It's athletic. It feels completely normal to you. It would actually feel, you would have to actually try to not do it the correct way, right? You would really have to try to release that club early. You would have to try to make that happen. So that's basically, what you have to work through. That's why we tell you, you got to do this many reps, 3,000 reps, 1,000 reps, because it's not something that going from that conscious or that conscious competence to the unconscious competence, that takes time and repetition. It's not something that happens just like that. It takes time and repetition. Think about anything you've ever learned to do. Learning how to type, learning how to play a musical instrument. You don't go from, when you're learning to play a musical instrument, you're having to think about every single note and going between every note. But then you start naturally going between the notes and you don't even have, it's just an unconscious thing that happens as you're playing it, as you get faster and faster and better at it. It's no different when you're changing things in your golf swing. All right, so John S. says, should the lead leg start turning out late in the backswing in order to get weight into the lead's heel or for a better turn? So yeah, you're getting late in the backswing, right? So as you're going up to the top, the last part of your backswing, you should start getting your lead leg to be starting to turn out and getting to your lead side. You should be starting to get to your lead side before you reach the top of the swing. We talk about that in many videos on the website. I'd recommend checking out the how to start the downswing video, BR014. You can search that video. Clay goes over a drill in that video called the step drill, which is a great drill to get that proper feeling. So John, if you want to check that out, in the upper right hand corner, you should see a little search box there. Select that and search BR Bob Ryan 014. It's a great drill to help you with that. So Richard C says, I tend to fall back slightly on all my swings. Any tips? Hard to say exactly why you're doing that without seeing your swing, but a lot of times I see people fall back in their swing because they swing over the top, right? So they swing over the top and then their spine angles are kind of leaning toward the target. So basically they're like this, and then in the downswing, they'll kind of fall back like that. So if you're seeing that, then I would work on making sure that you're getting your spine angled away and that you're swinging from the inside and shifting your weight as you're doing that. Like I said, it's hard to say exactly why, but you need to make sure you're getting a good weight shift. You need to make sure that your spine angle is good. And you need to make sure that you're swinging from the inside. So I'd be looking at the Stop Chunking and Topping course, the Stable Fluid Spine course, and the Never Slice Again course. You just got to look at your swing and see what's going on there. If you're struggling with slices, then you more than likely need to work on the Stop Chunking and Topping and the Never Slice Again course for sure. To get to any of those courses, click the house icon. That'll take you to the home page. You'll see a list of all the courses there. So Anthony A says, how do you aim the club face for a bunker shot? Opening the club face 45 degrees confuses the issue. It's going to be, it really just depends on how high or low the handle is. If you like to come in with the handle really, really low like this, which is a technique that some people use, you can aim more to the left because if you imagine here, if I have this face, right? So if I have this face really, really open, right? And then I get the handle low, look where the face is pointing, right? So if I come in really, really low, my face is basically pointing straight forward, right? Whereas if I have that face really, really open and I'm coming in and with my hands higher, my face is pointing more that way. So it really just depends on how high your hands are, depending on where you point it. So I would just play around with it, line it up with the face pointed toward the target and see on your bunker shots, see where the club goes in relationship to your face, right? And then I would just aim accordingly based on that. It's really the best thing for you to do, Anthony, is just to go out and really learn for yourself. And you got to go out and hit a bunch of shots to get good at this and to get a feel for it. So try aiming the face at the target, right? So that would be kind of toward the outlet there, right? So I'd have my feet pointed that way, the face is pointed that way. That's where my target is, and see where the ball goes in relationship to that. Right? If the ball goes more to the left, then I would just aim this a little bit more, aim it to the right of your target. If it goes the other way, then aim the other way. It's really the best way to kind of figure it out, because there's no way for me to know how high your hands are as you're coming through impact, because it has a lot to do with the direction the ball is going to start. So Robert LS says, please review chest position when chipping. Just pointed, just weight shifted forward or chest tilted toward target. You want everything to kind of come through together. So your chest is turning back and through, right? So when you come into contact, your chest is going to be a little bit open, right? If you're hitting a high chip shot, right? If you're hitting a high one, your chest will be more pointed toward the ball because you want to allow the club to release. If you're hitting a low shot, then you want your chest to be more open as you're coming into contact, so that way you can drive the ball in there really, really low. So it really depends on the kind of shot that you're trying to hit. The main thing is you want to feel like everything's kind of coming through together, right? So your arms, your hands, and the club, everything's kind of coming through with each other, and not the chest is stopping and then you're doing that. You want to allow the club to kind of release in front of your hands if you are trying to hit a higher shot. So John S. says, thanks, Q. Now I know why the step drill works. No problem, John. So Jeffrey G. says, how important is it to keep my left arm perfectly straight extended throughout the swing? It's not that important. It really depends on the faults that you have in your swing, but there are tour players out there, lots of tour players that do not keep their lead arm straight. If you look at Brooks Koepka, he bends his arm as he comes into impact. You look at Lee Westwood, who's been on tear lately, right? Been in contention the last couple of weeks. Lee Westwood has his arms like this at impact, right? So it just depends. Now, if you're going up to the top of the swing and you're really breaking down your arms like this, you're typically going to cast the club from the very start of the swing. I'd need to see your swing to see if it's really an issue. But I would say excessive bending in the arms is usually not a good thing, but having some bend in the arms is usually fine. So Kelly M says, I've started blocking shots dead left. Started blocking the shots dead left. The shorter the club, the more left it goes. I'm going to assume that you're left-handed. Blocks are shots that go, for a right-handed golfer, or shots that go off to the right, or to be, kind of a straight push. So I'm going to assume that you're left-handed. Your path and your face are pointed in the same direction. So assuming that you're left-handed, right? If you're hitting blocks out there, that means that you're swinging too much into out, and your face is in line with that. So right, so you wouldn't be hitting blocks left. You'd be hitting pulls. So if you're hitting pulls, that means that you're coming over the top, right? So I would try to feel like you're swinging much more to the inside. I'd recommend working through either the move course or the never slice again course. I know you're not necessarily slicing, but that course is all about getting you to swing more from the inside. And if you're hitting blocks, or if you're hitting pulls to the left, that's from your face in your path being over the top, and you need to get that to be working more that way. Think swinging more toward first base versus right now you're actually swinging toward third base. You may feel like you're swinging toward second base, but the reality is you're swinging toward third base. All right, so we got about 10 minutes left if we have any more questions. No problem, Kelly. Glad I could help. So like I said, I'll give you, we may wrap it up early if we don't have any more questions. All right, so looks like we got a question. So Bob R says, I have no problem taking the club away in the wide backswing, but my follow through tends to collapse early. My release is out front. Does a shorter follow through inhibit power? Yeah, if you're not extending all the way through impact, yeah, you're definitely not going to have as much power. Sounds like you're probably slowing down your body and kind of throwing your arms instead of getting your body to open up. So I'd recommend working on the straight line release course to get your body opening up and everything releasing and extending more out in front. So to work on the straight line release course, click the house icon. That'll take you to the homepage. Scroll down the homepage. You'll see a list of all the courses there. Select the straight line release and get started on the drill. Kelly M says, what's odd is I used to hit dead straight, so not sure why I've changed. It's because you're human. Things creep into our swings. Things slowly start to kind of creep in there, and then they end up in our swing. So it's not, if we were robots and we could just do the same exact movement every single time, then this game would be pretty easy. We just have to find that movement and just stick with it. But fortunately, we're human, and we're going to have different things kind of creep into our swing. So it's completely normal to start, developing a little bit of a pull or a block or whatever it might be. Start developing a little bit more of a fade. Maybe you start chunking a little bit more, and it's just you just got to tinker with it to get back to where you want to be. So Bob R says, thank you. No problem, Bob. Kelly M says, frustrating. Yeah, it's definitely be a frustrating game. David CM says, good time to say thanks for sharing your expertise. I watch daily. No problem, David. Glad I could help. So Keith S says, sometimes top my fairway wood. Should I move a little closer and ball further back? Most likely, typically if you're topping your fairway woods, it's because you have that ball position too far forward and you're kind of hanging back as you're coming through. So get that ball back in your stance and really focus on trying to hit the ground. I've tried to feel like almost like you're taking a deep divot. It's not necessarily the reality of what you're going to do, but if you're topping fairway woods, it's because the club is bottoming out before the golf ball. You're coming in, the club bottoms out, misses the ground, and then hits the top of the golf ball. So you need to feel like you're really coming down and taking a big divot in front of the golf ball. That's what I would try to feel like. And the reality will more than likely be something more like maybe a really thin divot that's just barely in front of the golf ball, and you'll get some much better contact. So, yeah, that's what I'd be looking at doing. So Ken P says, would you repeat the instruction course or number for the hands and wrist position? Yeah, so to get to the crazy detail vault, click the instruction tab, then click the vault categories, then go to the crazy detail vault, and you'll see a list of all the course or all the videos in there. And it's not just the wrist. They talk about the leg, elbow, shoulders, everything's basically in there if you wanted, the kind of the crazy detail version of those. So Richard C says, tend to take the club around my body down the line. The club exits about waist high, not shoulder height. That's where I first see the club head. Also, I take it too far inside on the backswing. I tend to take the club around my body down the line. Club exits around waist high, not shoulder height. I mean, it really depends on your camera angle, but that's not necessarily a bad thing for the club to exit around waist level. But if you're bringing the club too far inside, you need to feel like you're getting more elevation of your arms. You're bending your right arm in and sucking the club in most likely, instead of I try to keep your right arm straighter and feel like the club's going more up like this. So Jeffrey G says, regarding a vertical shoulder rotation, can this be overdone? Should rotation be aligned with spine tilt as a goal? Not necessarily. Your spine is not a straight rod. It's curved, and it curves throughout the swing. So you can't really necessarily align it like that the way you might think. If it's even more vertical than that, any negative impact from doing that. So the more vertical you can get your shoulders, typically the better. Basically the better impact position you can get into. If you look at someone like a Joaquin Niemann, he's super flexible. Shoulders are very, very his shoulders are very vertical, but most people aren't going to be physically capable of doing that. So I would say you're not really going to be physically capable of it being to where it's overdone, is essentially what it comes down to. Because I'd say Joaquin Niemann's the person I would say is the most vertical I've ever seen, right? And he's crazy flexible to get into that kind of position. So I would say it's possible, but it's very highly unlikely that you would get the shoulders to be too vertical. You can't really overdo it. The more vertical you can get it, it's typically going to be the better. That's going to allow you to get this club to throw more out in front. Jeffrey G says, gotcha, thanks, no problem. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Brandon H says, Q, thanks for your office hours. We join on Fridays in Asia, late night here. Have a good day. Thanks, Brandon. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you have a great weekend. So thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you all next time.